Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I bought a new phone about 2 years back. Nothing fancy, just needed something that worked. Got a new number with it and didn't think much of it at first. That was my mistake. The call started maybe a week after I activated the line. First one came in while I was eating breakfast. Some guy asked if I was Tom. I told him no. Wrong number. 2 days later, another call. This time it was someone named Mike asking if Tom was still coming to the game that night. I explained that this wasn't Tom and he had the wrong number. Mike seemed confused, saying this was the number Tom gave him. I told him it was my number now and apologized. He hung up without another word. Over the next few weeks, the calls kept coming. Different people, same question about Tom. It was like this guy had given out my number to half the city before ditching it. I tried being polite at first. I'd explained that I wasn't Tom, that whoever they were looking for must have changed numbers, that they needed to update their contacts. Most people were understanding and apologized. Some acted like I was lying to them, like I was hiding Tom somewhere and refusing to put him on the phone. One guy even argued with me for 5 minutes straight, insisting I was Tom and just pretending not to be. He kept saying he recognized my voice. I'd never spoken to this person before in my life. Then the text messages started. Casual stuff at first. People asking about plans, reminding Tom about appointments, even a few asking if he wanted to grab drinks. I'd reply to each one explaining the situation, asking them to let Tom know he needed to tell people about his new number. But it didn't stop. After about 3 months of this nonsense, something changed. The calls got more frequent and they weren't from Tom's friends anymore. Real estate agents started calling, asking if I was still interested in viewing properties. Marketing companies wanted to discuss business opportunities. I even got a call from a car dealership asking when I wanted to come test drive the vehicle I'd inquired about. One insurance agent called me 3 times in 2 days about a quote Tom had supposedly requested. I never inquired about any vehicle. I didn't need a house. I wasn't looking for business opportunities. I definitely didn't request an insurance quote. That's when it clicked. This wasn't accidental anymore. Tom wasn't just some forgetful guy who forgot to update his contacts. He was deliberately giving out my number to these places. He was using my phone number to dodge spam calls and sales pitches. The guy had basically weaponized my phone number. I was furious. This guy, whoever he was, had decided that his inconvenience was more important than mine. He'd turned my phone into his personal spam filter, and I was the one dealing with the fallout. I tried blocking numbers, but new ones kept calling. For every number I blocked, 2 more would pop up the next day. I tried being more firm with the callers, telling them that Tom was a jerk who was using my number without permission. Some were sympathetic, most just moved on to their next call. None of it made the problem go away. The breaking point came on some afternoon. I was at work and my phone rang 4 times in an hour. 2 real estate agents, 1 insurance salesman, and someone from a timeshare company. I couldn't focus on anything because my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. My boss even asked if everything was okay because I kept getting interrupted. I had to explain the whole situation to him, which made me look ridiculous. That night, I sat on my couch staring at my phone trying to figure out what to do. Changing my number seemed like letting Tom win. Why should I have to go through the hassle of updating all my contacts and accounts because some stranger decided to be a jerk? Plus, I'd already given this number to my bank, my doctor, my work, everyone important. Starting over felt like admitting defeat. Then another call came in. The caller said they were trying to reach Tom regarding a property inquiry he'd submitted. I didn't even answer, just let it go to voicemail. But sitting there listening to yet another message meant for someone else, I'd had enough. I needed to make this stop and being polite clearly wasn't working. The next morning I got another call, a real estate agent again, asking for Tom. Instead of answering the call, I sent a text message. I told them this was Tom and apologized for missing the call. Then I added that I couldn't talk right now because I was getting screwed at a furry convention. I hit send before I could second guess myself. It felt petty and ridiculous, but I was past caring about being the bigger person. The agent didn't respond. Good. Maybe they'd remove the number from their system now. A few days later, another business called asking for Tom. I sent the same message, word for word. My new template response for anyone looking for this guy. Then a third call came in. About a week later, some marketing company wanting to discuss a promotional opportunity Tom had expressed interest in. Same message again. I was actually starting to enjoy it a little bit. That evening, my phone started ringing. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It called back immediately. Then again. 5 missed calls in 10 minutes, all from the same number. Then the texts started coming in. Someone was clearly angry, demanding to know what was wrong with me and telling me to stop saying that to people. They asked if I thought this was funny. Then they identified themselves as Tom and demanded I stop sending that message to people. He said I was ruining his reputation. He said people were asking him questions he didn't want to answer. He said I was being childish and needed to grow up. After months of this guy using my number as his personal dumping ground, he had the nerve to be upset that I was embarrassing him. The irony was almost beautiful. I told him to stop giving out my number then. He shot back that I should just get a new number if it was such a problem. He said it would be easier for everyone. I replied that maybe he could stop being a jerk and deal with his own calls instead. He asked why I was being so difficult about this. I told him I'd been dealing with his calls for months and he'd done nothing to fix it. I said he'd actively made it worse by giving my number to businesses on purpose. He denied it at first, saying I had no proof. Then he admitted it but said it was no big deal. He said I was overreacting. He sent back a dismissive response telling me whatever and to just stop. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. The calls looking for Tom stopped after that. Completely. Not a single real estate agent, not a single friend asking about plans, nothing. Whatever I'd said had apparently motivated Tom to actually fix the problem on his end. My phone finally went quiet. Just my actual contacts, my actual messages, my actual life. Took 2 years and one extremely weird text message, but the nightmare was finally over. I like routine. Same lunch spot when I can manage it, same walking route to my car, and yeah, same drinks. The company keeps the break room stocked with everything you could want, so it's never been an issue. I grab what I like, other people grab what they like, and everyone's happy. Or so I thought. It started small. I'd be at my desk or in the break room and someone would walk by with this little smirk and ask me if this was another one wondering what number I was on today. I'd force a laugh, shrug it off, try to be cool about it. But here's the thing. It happened constantly. Different people, same joke. And it wasn't just about the drinks. It was about everything I ate or drank where someone could see me. The worst part? It reminded me of my dad. He was obsessed with monitoring what everyone ate. He'd count my snacks, comment on portion sizes, make little jokes that weren't really jokes. It messed with my head for years. So when coworkers started doing the same thing, even casually, it hit differently than they probably meant it to. After months of this, I finally said something. I kept it brief, didn't make a big deal out of it. Just mentioned I didn't find the comments funny and would appreciate if they'd stop. Most people seemed to get it and backed off. But not everyone. A few weeks ago, I was taking a quick break in one of the common areas. Nothing fancy, just sitting there, eating a fruit roll-up and scrolling through my phone. This coworker walked past, did this little laugh, and asked me how many of those I'd eaten today. I don't know if I was already irritated about something else or if I'd just finally hit my limit, but something snapped. I put my phone down and turned to look at her directly. I told her I didn't understand why it was any of her business. I explained that commenting on what other people eat is basically the same as commenting on their body, and it's not appropriate. I made it clear I would never do that to her, and I'd really appreciate if she'd stop doing it to me. She just stood there. Her expression shifted from amused to shocked to what looked like anger. She didn't say anything back, just turned and walked away. I went back to my phone and my snack, honestly relieved to have finally put my foot down. I barely thought about it after that day. Then last week happened. My manager pulled me aside near the end of my shift. She had this serious look on her face, the kind that makes your stomach drop because you know something's coming. She asked if we could talk in her office for a minute. I followed her, trying to figure out what I could have possibly done wrong. When we sat down, she didn't waste time and she told me she'd heard I made my coworker cry. I asked her who she was talking about. She mentioned the woman from the break room incident. She'd gone to management upset about our interaction. I explained exactly what happened, how it wasn't the first time I'd addressed the issue, how I'd tried being polite before and it didn't work. My manager said she understood but told me they just cared about me and that I could have said it nicer. I pointed out that I did say it nicer, multiple times. The comments kept happening. I asked at what point I was allowed to be direct without it being a problem. She sighed. Did that thing where managers try to make both sides feel heard while actually just wanting the problem to go away? She told me to look. She wasn't saying I was in trouble, but I needed to understand how it came across. She said my coworker felt attacked. I asked why her feeling attacked was more important than me feeling harassed every time someone commented on what I was eating or drinking. She said it was about how I communicated. She told me I came across like a mean girl. That phrase, mean girl, like I was some high school bully instead of someone who'd politely asked to be left alone, got ignored, and finally had to be direct about it. I sat there trying to process how I was somehow the problem in this situation. I asked her to let me get this straight. I said my coworker could make comments about what I eat for months. I could ask her to stop multiple times, and when I finally told her directly that it wasn't okay, I was the mean one. My manager said she was just saying there were better ways to handle things. She suggested that maybe next time I should pull someone aside privately instead of correcting them in the moment. I reminded her it was in a common area with barely anyone around. I pointed out I wasn't yelling or calling names. I just told my coworker why her comment wasn't appropriate. The conversation went in circles for a while. She kept emphasizing that I should be more understanding and that my coworker's intentions were good. I kept pointing out that good intentions don't make inappropriate comments okay. She wrapped it up with some vague statement about everyone trying to be more mindful of each other. I left her office feeling like I'd been punished for setting a boundary. The coworker who'd made the comment avoided me completely after that. Other people must have heard about it too because suddenly everyone was weirdly careful around me, like I was some ticking time bomb waiting to explode. The whole thing is ridiculous. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm not demanding everyone walk on eggshells. I'm just asking people to mind their own business about what I choose to eat and drink. That shouldn't be controversial. I met my best friend in middle school back when we were both awkward kids trying to figure out where we fit in. We clicked instantly over our shared love of terrible reality TV and our complete inability to understand algebra. Throughout high school and college, we were inseparable. She was there when my mom got sick, and I was there when her dad lost his job. We joked about being in each other's wedding someday, making ridiculous toasts and ugly crying during the vows. Then she met him. Her fiancé wasn't a bad guy exactly, but he came from money. Real money. The kind where his family had a summer house and a winter house and probably a house for every other season too. She seemed the same at first. We still had our wine nights and movie marathons. But slowly things started changing. She began dropping comments about designer brands I'd never heard of and restaurants with year-long waiting lists. The wedding planning kicked it into overdrive. What started as a simple celebration turned into this massive production. Every conversation became about color swatches and floral arrangements and which celebrity wedding planner she was trying to book. I tried to be supportive because that's what best friends do, but it was getting exhausting. Still, when she asked me to be her maid of honor, I said yes without hesitation. That's what 20 years of friendship meant to me. 6 months before the wedding, I had surgery. Nothing life-threatening, but it left some scars on my shoulder and upper arm. They weren't huge or particularly noticeable, just thin white lines that stood out a bit against my skin. The doctors said they'd fade more over time. I didn't think much of it. They were just scars, proof that I'd healed. 3 months before the wedding, she video called me to discuss the bridesmaid dresses. She'd chosen these elegant off-the-shoulder gowns in a deep emerald green. They were beautiful, and I told her so. She seemed thrilled that I liked them and went on about how amazing they'd look in photographs. Then she brought up my scars. She said we needed to talk about them, specifically about how they'd show in the dress. She explained that she really needed everything to look perfect for the photos since the photographer cost a fortune, and she couldn't have anything distracting in the pictures. I told her they were barely noticeable and that I didn't think anyone would even see them. She said that she'd see them, that everyone would see them, and asked if I could just cover them up with makeup or something. The way she said it, so casual and dismissive, made something twist in my stomach, but I pushed it down. Wedding stress did weird things to people. I'd heard the horror stories. I told her I could try some heavy-duty concealer, but wasn't sure how well it would stay on all day. She just said to make it work because the day had to be absolutely flawless. I should have recognized that my best friend was disappearing into someone I didn't recognize, but I made excuses for her. The wedding was in 3 months. Surely she'd go back to normal after. The week before the wedding, she called me in a panic about the rehearsal dinner, then about the flower girl's shoes, then about the font on the place cards. Every conversation ended with her near tears over some minor detail that wouldn't matter to anyone but her. I listened and reassured and tried to be the supportive friend I'd always been. The morning of the wedding, I spent an hour in front of the mirror with 3 different types of concealer, trying to cover my scars. They were still faintly visible if you looked closely, but unless someone was staring directly at my shoulder, they'd never notice. It would have to be good enough. The ceremony went off without a hitch. She looked stunning. He looked nervous in that sweet way grooms do, and I managed not to cry during my speech at the reception. For a few hours, it felt like maybe everything would be okay. Maybe this was just wedding stress, and my friend was still in there somewhere. Then came the photos. The photographer had us arranged outside near the venue's garden. The bridal party clustered around the happy couple. I was standing slightly behind her, smiling at the camera when she turned and looked at me. Really looked at me. Her face changed. The bright smile vanished, replaced by something cold and furious. She accused me of not covering my scars. I explained that I did, that I'd spent over an hour that morning with makeup. She said she could still see them and that she'd specifically told me to hide them completely. She yelled that this was her wedding day and I was ruining it. The photographer cleared his throat awkwardly. The other bridesmaid shifted uncomfortably. Her new husband put a hand on her arm and tried to calm her down, saying that you could barely see anything and that it was fine. She turned on him and shouted that it wasn't fine, that nothing about this was fine, that I was being selfish and inconsiderate, and that now her photos were going to be ruined. I said I wasn't trying to ruin anything, that these were just scars and they were part of me. She shot back that maybe I should have thought about that before agreeing to be in her wedding. The words hung in the air between us. 20 years of friendship and she'd just reduced me to a blemish on her perfect day. I felt something crack inside my chest. I said that maybe I shouldn't have agreed. I started walking toward the venue. I needed to get away, to process what had just happened. Behind me, I heard her shriek my name. Then I heard footsteps running after me. I turned just in time to see her pull off one of her heels and throw it at me like a major league pitcher. Instinct kicked in and I dodged sideways. The shoe sailed past my head and through the open door to the reception hall. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion. The shoe arced through the air, tumbling end over end, and landed directly in the center of the elaborate 5-tier wedding cake. The impact sent the top 3 layers sliding sideways. The middle tier collapsed. Frosting and fondant and little sugar flowers cascaded down in an avalanche of expensive destruction. The entire wedding party stood frozen in the garden, staring through the doorway at the ruined cake. Someone's phone was out, definitely recording. Her face went from red to white to red again. Then she dropped to the ground and started screaming. Not crying, screaming. These horrible guttural wails like something had died. Her new husband rushed to her side, trying to calm her down while she pounded her fists on the grass. I looked at the cake, at her having a complete meltdown, at the wedding party standing around like they'd just witnessed a car crash. The photographer was still holding his camera, looking completely lost. I walked back to where I'd left my purse, grabbed it, and headed for my car. Behind me, the screaming continued, joined now by frantic voices trying to figure out how to salvage the situation. My phone started buzzing before I even made it to the parking lot. Texts from the other bridesmaids, from mutual friends, from her mother. I turned it off and drove home. I never did find out how they explained the cake situation to the guests. I blocked her number that night and most of the mutual friends who tried to tell me I'd overreacted. The few who stayed in touch told me she'd spent the rest of the reception crying, that the party had basically ended after the cake incident, that she was telling everyone I deliberately tried to ruin her day. 20 years of friendship ended because my scars didn't fit her aesthetic vision. Where I lived, the church was the center of most people's social lives. My family attended services regularly, and by the time I was in 8th grade, I'd settled into the routine of Sunday meetings and youth activities. That's when he started teaching the Sunday school class for teens. He was 19, fresh off his mission, and everyone thought he was so mature and responsible. My parents trusted him. The whole congregation did. It started with him paying extra attention to me after class. Just small talk at first, asking how school was going, complimenting my answers during discussions. Then he started showing up at places I'd be: the grocery store, the library, the park where I'd walk my dog after school, always with some excuse about needing to pick something up or running errands. The roses started appearing in my locker at school in October. No name at first, just notes saying things like, "Thinking of you and you're special." I thought maybe it was someone from school playing a prank. Then the notes got more specific, mentioning things only he would know from our church conversations. Details about my favorite scriptures or things I'd said during class discussions. When I finally figured out it was him, I didn't know what to do. I was 14. He was an adult, a teacher, someone my parents respected. I tried ignoring it, but the gifts kept coming. Notes, flowers, small trinkets left on my porch. One time he left a teddy bear holding a heart that said, "Be mine." He cornered me after a youth activity one Wednesday night around 8 p.m. Everyone else had gone inside, and he asked me directly if I'd go out with him. I said no. I said I was too young, that it didn't feel right. But he kept pushing, saying age was just a number, that we had a special connection, that he'd been praying about it and felt it was meant to be. He said he'd never felt this way about anyone before. I said no 3 more times that night. But he wouldn't stop messaging me, wouldn't stop showing up, wouldn't stop making me feel like I was being difficult and unreasonable for not giving him a chance. My phone buzzed constantly with texts from him. He'd show up at my school during lunch sometimes, waving from across the parking lot. Eventually, I felt so worn down and overwhelmed that I agreed to see him just to make it all stop. We dated for maybe 6 weeks. I hated every minute of it, but didn't know how to get out. He was always pushing boundaries, always wanting more. My friends at school thought it was weird that I was dating someone so much older. Some of them stopped talking to me altogether, but the adults around me didn't seem to notice or care. When I finally managed to tell him I just wanted to be friends, he seemed hurt, but accepted it. The flowers and notes stopped. Life went back to something resembling normal, though I carried the weight of what had happened during those weeks like a stone in my chest. I started avoiding church activities when I could, made excuses about homework or not feeling well. My parents thought I was just going through a phase. Years passed. I moved away for college, built a life somewhere else, and rarely came home. I changed my phone number, deleted my social media accounts, and started fresh with new ones. I didn't want any connection to that time in my life. But when my cousin got married, I couldn't miss it. The reception was at the church, naturally, and I found myself back in that building for the first time in almost a decade. I saw him across the room, older now, but unmistakable. He was talking with some relatives, and when he noticed me, he smiled and walked over. He told me it had been so long and asked how I'd been. I said I'd been good and was living out of state now. He said that was great and asked if I wanted to grab coffee and catch up for old time's sake. He mentioned he was in town visiting family and had some time to kill. I should have said no. A part of me was curious, maybe morbidly curious. Maybe I wanted to see if he'd changed, or if he even remembered things the way I did. We went to a diner down the street. The conversation was awkward small talk at first. Jobs, family updates, mutual acquaintances. He told me about his wife and kids, showed me pictures on his phone, two daughters and a son. Then he got quiet and looked down at his coffee. He said he wanted to ask me something that had bothered him for years. I told him to go ahead. He asked why I had slept with him and then just zoned him like that. He mentioned how I'd kept dating other guys from school right after. He said it had really hurt him back then and made him feel like he wasn't good enough, or something. He said he'd spent years wondering what he'd done wrong. I sat there for a moment, feeling that old stone in my chest suddenly burn hot. I asked him if he actually wanted the truth. He said yes, that he thought he deserved to know. He said it would help him find closure. I told him okay. I took a breath and told him I was 14 years old at the time. I was a child and he was an adult. I reminded him that when he first pushed for it, I said no multiple times. I explained that he kept pushing for 45 minutes, getting more and more aggressive until I finally gave in. I told him I gave in because a few months before dating him, I'd been assaulted and ended up in the hospital. I pointed out that he knew about that. He knew I'd never even kissed anyone before that happened. He'd even come to visit me in the hospital with flowers. I told him I was terrified of ending up hurt again, so I stopped fighting him. I told him I thought if I just let him do what he wanted, maybe he'd stop pressuring me and things would go back to normal. Then I said it plainly. I told him he raped me. His face went white, his hands started shaking around his coffee cup. He stammered that it wasn't like that he didn't mean to, that it wasn't how it was. I told him that was exactly how it was. He said he would never do something like that he thought I seemed okay with it. He said I never said anything afterward. I asked him what part of a 14-year-old child saying no while he wouldn't stop seemed okay to him. I asked him why he thought a child who'd just been assaulted months earlier would feel safe saying anything afterward. He started crying. Actually crying right there in the diner. He tried to say more, tried to reframe it, tried to make it something else. He said he was young too, that he didn't understand, that he thought we had something special. But I was done. I told him he asked a question and I answered truthfully. I said he shouldn't ask questions if he couldn't handle honest answers. I told him he spent years feeling sorry for himself while I spent years in therapy trying to piece myself back together. I said I hoped he thought about this every time he looked at his daughters. I stood up, left $5 for my coffee, and walked out. I could hear him still crying when the door closed behind me. Did it fix anything? Nope. Did it undo what happened? Of course not. But watching him sit with even a fraction of the pain I'd carried for years felt like finally setting down that stone I'd been carrying. He'd spent over a decade feeling sorry for himself, casting himself as the victim in a story where he'd victimized a child. He'd gotten married, had children, built a life, all while carrying this warped version of events where I was the one who hurt him. Now he knew the truth, and he'd have to live with it. I used to push through everything. Stomach hurts? Take some painkillers and deal with it. Headache? Drink water and move on. But what started as occasional stomach pain turned into something I couldn't ignore anymore. It got worse over months, this sharp, constant ache on my right side that made walking feel like someone was stabbing me with every step. I'd wake up in the middle of the night sweating, clutching my stomach, trying not to wake anyone up. My parents took me to the doctor multiple times. Every visit was the same routine. They'd press on my stomach, ask me to rate the pain, run some tests, and then send me home with nothing concrete. One doctor said it was probably stress. Another suggested it might be something I ate. A third one thought maybe I had really bad period cramps. Months went by like this. 5 then 6 months of appointments and tests and still no real answers. School became torture. I'd miss 2 days a week because getting out of bed felt impossible. My teachers were understanding at first, but after a while, I could see the skepticism in their eyes. That look that said they thought I was making excuses. My grades started slipping. My friends stopped inviting me places because I always had to cancel. After half a year of this nightmare, they did more extensive testing. Turns out my appendix was completely destroyed. Twisted, deformed, infected, swollen up like a balloon, and rubbing against my stomach walls. The surgeon told my parents I was lucky it hadn't burst yet. They scheduled the surgery immediately. The operation itself was a blur. I remember going under and then waking up with 3 fresh incisions on my stomach, each one angry and red and stitched up. The relief from not having that constant pain anymore was incredible, but the recovery wasn't easy. Everything hurt. Moving hurt. Laughing hurt. Coughing was absolute agony. The doctors told me I needed to rest for at least a week at home, then take it easy for another week after that. No heavy lifting, no running around. Definitely no standing for long periods. My parents were strict about following the doctor's orders. They made sure I stayed in bed, only getting up when necessary. 2 weeks after the surgery, I went back to school. It was too soon, honestly, but I'd already missed so much time that I didn't want to fall further behind. Plus, being stuck at home was driving me crazy. My mom packed my bag lighter than usual and gave me a note for my teachers explaining the situation. The first few days back were okay. My teachers let me leave class early to avoid the hallway crowds. My friends carried my books. Everyone seemed to understand I was still recovering. Then came the school soccer match. Our class was playing against another grade, and even though I couldn't play, I wanted to watch and support my classmates. I showed up to the field with everyone else, but all the benches were already packed with students. I stood on the sidelines, trying not to put too much weight on one leg, shifting back and forth every few minutes because standing still made my incisions ache. My science teacher noticed me standing there. She was one of the good ones, the kind who actually paid attention to her students. She came over and told me I shouldn't be standing like that, not after just having surgery. Then she turned to one of my classmates sitting on the bench nearby and asked if she could let me sit down since I needed to rest. The girl she asked was someone I'd had a few run-ins with before. We didn't hate each other, but we definitely weren't friends. Still, she looked at me, then at Mrs. M, and stood up without arguing. She said it was fine and gestured for me to take her spot. I thanked her and sat down carefully, trying not to wince as my stomach protested the movement. But then her cousin, or maybe just her friend, I was never totally sure, completely exploded. The other girl asked if we were serious right now. Everyone turned to look. The soccer game kept going, but our little group was suddenly the center of attention. She started yelling that I was faking it, that I was always faking something to get attention. I asked her what she was talking about, genuinely confused by how angry she was. She said I knew exactly what she meant, that I was pretending to be hurt so everyone would feel sorry for me, that the surgery probably wasn't even real, and I just wanted special treatment. My face got hot. People were staring now, some of them looking between us like they were watching a tennis match. A few classmates shifted uncomfortably. I told her I wasn't faking anything, trying to keep my voice steady. She shot back that sure I wasn't, and that's why I was walking fine and coming to watch soccer instead of staying home. She said if I was really recovering from surgery, I wouldn't even be here. Mrs. M tried to intervene, telling the girl that was enough and that I had a medical excuse. But the other girl cut her off, saying she didn't care about some note my mom wrote, that anyone could write a note. Something inside me snapped. I spent months being told my pain wasn't real, months of doctors dismissing me, months of missing school and losing friends and feeling like my body was betraying me. And now this girl was standing here calling me a liar in front of everyone. I stood up and walked right up to her. I asked if she wanted proof. Before she could answer, I lifted my shirt just enough to show my stomach. The 3 scars were still pink and raised. The stitches had only been removed a few days before. They looked exactly like what they were, fresh surgical wounds that hadn't fully healed yet. The soccer field went quiet. Even some of the players had stopped to look. Her face went from angry red to pale white in about 2 seconds. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. I let my shirt drop back down and asked if she still thought I was faking. She didn't say anything, just turned around and sat back down on the grass, staring at her shoes. Nobody else said a word. Mrs. M gave me a small nod and gestured for me to sit back down. The rest of the match was awkward. The girl didn't look at me once. Her friend kept looking over but didn't try to defend her. When the game ended and everyone started heading back to the school building, she practically ran to get away from me. For the rest of that school year, she didn't bother me once. Didn't make snide comments, didn't spread rumors, nothing. She even stopped bothering my best friend, which was a relief because she'd been making her life miserable for months. 3 months later in August, I had a follow-up appointment. The doctors found something else in the pathology report from my appendix. A tumor, small but definitely there. They told me it was caught early because of the surgery and that I'd need to come in for regular checkups to make sure nothing else developed. So yeah, that girl accused me of faking surgery that ended up saving me from something even worse. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.